There are 4 reasons for these videos. I'm tempted to say 7, and certainly you could stretch it out. That would be an insider joke. The first one is to rebel against control protocols by concept synergy. Whether it was Penny getting pissed off at neutral moderators in the CompuServe forum because people had the audacity to disagree with her, and then creating their own private forum where nobody could interfere with the deletions, with the bannings, with the harassment of what was actually called the Orlando Gang, the group of Lazaris friends in Orlando. And so the first step in that is to be out in a more public forum. Because while within any dogma, within any paradigm, you can harangue and blame and, defend the dogma at the expense of human beings, it's very difficult to do that in an argument with data in public. Because all human beings are ultimately looking for the same thing, to feel sustainably better with less expenditure of pain and unnecessary energy. That's the definition of intelligence. And to avoid feeling chronically worse. And so any philosophy, any relationship, any product must ultimately defend itself in a data-based feedback loop against that metric. Does it help human beings to feel sustainably better with less pain, less stress, less energy expenditure than the alternatives? And so you want to get out of a monopoly framework, the very thing that concept synergy and granted Lazaris, by choosing one channel, kind of has a tendency to move in. And so Concept Synergy has signed all of its employees to non-disclosure agreements multiple times to stop abuses coming out from the staff. They've trademarked Lazaris's name with the statement that if you want to have access to the Concept Synergy website, you cannot talk about Lazaris or the Lazaris material without written consent. So there's an absurd degree of information control. And there's only one group of people or one type of person that wants to control data. And that's a person who benefits from misinformation. There's no reason to control critical feedback, reviews, stuff that's going on. We're not talking about trade secrets here. Concept Synergy has not invented a new way to print paper or anything like that. We're talking about experiences. And when those experiences are statistically and reliably very positive, then there's no fear of the cost. There's always a shadow side, there's always a dark side, there's always failure. Nothing works 100% of the time. But when you've got a strong, robust message and product, you're not afraid of the anomalies. You're not afraid of the negative side. Concept Synergy is and does a lot to control information, which brings up reasonable concern. So that's the first thing, break and rebel against those communication protocols. The other is to alert clients of probable dangers. Now, what do I mean by probable? Well, a majority of Concept Synergy staff that I'm aware of has, anywhere from a negative skeptical to a filled with rage and hate type relationship with Concept Synergy. Well, that's not a very good selling point. Because if you love Lazaris so much that you want to work for the company that produces the Lazaris material, and you go from that position to loathing, disgust, rage, hate, revenge, something's not right with the protocol that produces those results. Because remember, those are not good states. That's not why people joined and got interested in the Lazaris material. In a friendship in Lazaris was so that they could feel bitter and enraged and betrayed, etc. The third thing is to integrate and talk about things that don't add up. So anyone who's had a very close relationship with a cult, with an authority figure, with a teacher, with parents, with religion, anyone who's had a very deep relationship with anything there's a whole mix of complicated, signals back and forth, and it's difficult to disentangle that because every relationship has a bright side and a dark side. There's no relationship out there, whether you're Jeffrey Dahmer or Lazaris, that doesn't have a positive side or a negative side. And the important thing, particularly, there is a very strong process with deep vertical relationships. And Lazaris has maintained, as has concept synergy, a vertical relationship in a number of ways. For example, if you pay your staff poorly, they're in a weaker survival position. And if you pay your staff poorly so that you can pay Jach Pursel millions by paying substandard wages, for example, to the staff, you create a psychological awareness of dependency that increases over time because you don't have a retirement fund, because you don't have your own access to resources. You have access to Jach Pursel, which creates a power dynamic. Well, anyone with a little bit of management sense and all of that knows and might steer away from those terrains. That doesn't seem to be Jach's goal. There are problems, and this ties in with dangers, to more, it seems like mostly to staff, but then you can't isolate that because, of course, if you're Penny, Jach's or Lazaris's number one friend and Jach's former wife, you're dead. If you're Penny's husband, you're dead. If you're the staff, you're just severely abused and traumatized. And if you're a client, you're confused and shamed statistically. Now, in order to mature in a relationship, in a vertical relationship of the nature of Lazaris and concept synergy, it generally starts out as a child relationship. That's the nature of a vertical relationship. And the idea is, you're the creator of universes, Lazaris, etc., but I'll connect with you and we'll ride up the wave together. Then there's a rebellion, the adolescent stage of the relationship, where you realize this is a joke. This is, it's the priests molesting the boys who are the most homosexual and are being covered up by the Vatican. It's what kind of a bullshitty crap. This is worse than evil. I mean, we pretend to be out caring for people as we strip poor people of their money. Fuck this thing. There's the antithesis, the rebellion from the dogma, from the cult. And that's the next stage in a maturing relationship. You have the honeymoon stage in your marriage. The second coming is here. I'm married. To I never want to see this creep again for the rest of my life. And both of these are extreme sympathy and antipathy. They're not adult yet. There's child, there's adolescent. And you need to then move to the adult, Well, they may not be the Antichrist, but I don't want to have a conversation for more than 20 minutes with this person. They may not be heaven sent, but they do pay their bills on time, and you parse out the details of a given relationship. Now, Lazaris and concept synergy seem intent in staying in the childlike state. It's beneficial. In any deification relationship, parents usually try to get their children to continue to see them in a godlike state and do what they're told because of it. But it doesn't, it's the place you want to get to is a place of adulthood. You can't do that without the rebellion. The rebellion, in this case, the concept synergy, is intent on silencing and suppressing rather than caring and showing any interest in the trauma of its staff or clients. So to talk through this thing, you want to, it's healthier to do it in public because there's a cult-like dynamic. So my commitment, and it's a fair and important one, is that I will publish on Lazaris.org or on YouTube or both 100% of the exchange and communication with Jach Pursel, with Alison Rose, with anyone at Concept Synergy, with Lazaris, 100% of the points they make of criticism, stonewalling, ignoring, if there is nothing here, meaning if there's no response and no video labeled responsive concept synergy, well, then you know that they're in the lowest state of exchange, which is stonewalling, denial, refusing to respond, refusing to be able and willing to respond, to be responsible. This is Lazaris's teaching. I think it makes sense. Well, you have Jach, Lazaris, concept synergy, unwilling to respond. If they are, then you have the chance to see a healthy dialogue, meaning I'm not any better or worse than concept synergy or whatever. So you would expect that there will be blind spots on my part, flaws on my part, particularly since there's some critique of the material and Lazaris has been a main influence. You would expect there to be areas that I'm messed up. Because if there's something messed up in the material and it's had a strong influence, then you would expect there to be some blind spots and things that wouldn't work on my part. And so, but the purpose of having these patterns kind of mediated and explored in public is people tend to behave better in a transparent public environment than they do in a controlled vertical environment behind closed doors. So concept synergy would like everyone to agree to not talk about any of this outside of its forums and asks for the right to investigate, if anyone did, and terminate their relationship with their good friend Lazaris if caught doing this outside of concept synergy's control protocol. Well, Lazaris has tapes about that. It's called The Power of Dominion, contrasting with domination. He's talked about the need to control and moving beyond that addictive need to control. But that doesn't mean, the fact that Lazaris talks to the cows come home does not mean that Jach or anyone at Concept Synergy does any of the material, one, and it doesn't mean if they do that it works. Because there's a large group of people that do a lot of things on the material and don't see the results put forth by Lazaris. Which brings me to kind of the last kind of reason for talking about this. To discourage abusive behaviors. Meaning when you're highly empathic, you don't throw your staff out in old age with no retirement fund. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of empathy to say, wow, they came on board, took a pay cut 30 years ago, And they thought there'd be a spiritual family because we told them there would be. And they thought with Lazaris talking about the elegance, abundance, that included them. Not just rich clients who don't need any more money, but who can afford to pay 1,000% markups on crystals. They thought that this applied to them too, that they mattered as well, that when Lazaris said, we'll never abandon you, they thought Lazaris was talking to them as well. And they didn't think that that meant being cast out in secrecy, in old age, without enough money to feel safe in ability to retire. You see, concept synergy is okay with doing that. It is a sociopathic action. Jach Pursel is behaving sociopathically to throw people out. See, Jach fell asleep and made millions. The staff busted their ass off, working longer hours than Jach, doing harder work than Jach, being paid less than market rates. Of all the people being paid to go to sleep, Jach's probably doing quite well above market rates. It is a sociopathic act to cast the staff out in that situation. And that obviously hasn't bothered Jach enough to part with some of his millions. But a sociopath who doesn't engage in empathy is still aware of fear. You care for people you've spent 20 and 30 years with. You take an interest in their survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, etc., etc. If the Lazaris material has not healed the shame, trauma, and abuse for its staff, for myself, why would it have healed that for Jach Pursel? If Jach Pursel is still operating from the reptilian brain, fight that which you are in a powerful position to win, run from that which is bigger than you, well, why should Jach care more about his employees than the average American business person? The trouble is it's all laced up in spiritual family, etc. So sociopaths are scared of media attention. It's one of the things that a sociopath still has access to is fear. You can be numb to love, you can be numb to empathy, but you're still scared. As a result, bringing sociopathic behavior into public light for public figures is one of the more effective ways to discourage sustained sociopathic behavior. So basically, a sociopath will treat someone like shit if it'll never get out and they'll never look bad, because then they have no fear. And so a sociopath will generally try and set up the situation so that nobody will ever know what's going on. However, websites of this nature bring an alarm bell in the reptilian brain. Oh, you mean I might feel some pain too? My goodness, I might actually be affected by my reptilian behavior. Okay, I don't care enough to love, but I do care enough to manage my image in public. So I will reduce my reptilian behavior and increase that which makes me look good. How about that? Maybe I'll bribe a new round of NDAs or something like that that will solve this problem very nicely, and then I can look good again and make more money. Because Jach Pursel makes money in direct correlation to how effective the Lazaris material is, but more importantly, the perception of effectiveness. Frankly, Jach could be a billionaire if the Lazaris material worked as well as Lazaris says it does. Because if Lazaris's protocols and techniques are more fun, more successful, more effective, and more cost-effective at creating success and abundance than Wayne Dyer, than any of the other teachings out there, than going to college, than looking at data, then everyone's going to do it. And they're going to tell the people they care, you should do this too, because it's easier to succeed and have more fun than if you don't. But that's a difficult case to be made within the Lazaris community. You have people who came into the material poor, who have racked up credit card debts, and the elegance of abundance hasn't solved it for them. You have people who inherited a lot of money, who have spent a lot of money on concept synergy and not gotten a penny of that money back in a return investment or in some, magical way. That's part of the problem with magical thinking is, it'll come in some other way. But there are there's a distinct minority, I don't know if it's any more than the average of people outside of concept synergy and the Lazaris material, that started the material poor, started paying concept synergies lots of money, and came out, abundant in some way. And so that's, and as a result, my understanding is that the client base of concept synergy is smaller today than it was 20 years ago. Nobody buys an ant trap and says, this ant trap works better at catching ants than any other ant trap that I know. I'm just going to stop using it. I'll buy a more expensive, inferior product because I hate myself. No, we do the things we experience and believe bring us more well-being based on experience. And so a lot of people, it's very interesting material, this and that and the other, didn't lead to deeper love. Maybe it led to fight. Maybe it led to isolation because you couldn't find someone who would believe your spiritual beliefs. And, it's difficult when Lazaris says to put your spirituality as your only priority. Not just your highest priority, your only priority. And by the way, that's us. We're the highest resonance. And then someone wants you to give them attention because you're dating them. Well, you're not my highest priority. You're not my only priority. I'm with Lazaris. And they couldn't find someone willing to go along with being number 3. Second to job. That's the American cultism of work first. So we'll fit you in after job, and then we'll fit you in after Lazaris. And we're going to keep spending more money. That creates conflict for some couples, including couples who both are interested in Lazaris but don't like running into debt because of the other person's, well, it's our only priority, And so discouraging abusive behavior and encouraging data-based behavior. Well, in order to have data-based behavior, you need data. Now, Jach Pursel is well defended against data. He doesn't open emails from clients. That was one of my shocks and surprises. One of my traumas, because I was in a bad place at the time. I wrote to Jach, hey, Jach, what's going on? I'm seeing this with this Lazaris friend, and this going on, and this is going on with my life, and I'm hearing this. What's going on? Well, Jach has a terrific way of dealing with this. He has his staff. It's too much trouble, apparently, to write to a $100,000 client. He has his staff write back and say, Jach doesn't have time for more intimate friends at this time, so we will not open your email. See you later. And it's wonderful for Jach, but that's the trouble with a sociopathic protocol. It's good for the one person, but how did I feel? You see, and that's where it comes into protecting the public. Lazaris is spouting out about being ancient ones and divine ones and all of this. Jach won't treat you as decently as a normal business person would treat a normal customer. So you've got schizophrenia. It's crazy making. Lazaris talks about Christian crazy making, but not his own. So you have hypocrisy. So the purpose in doing this is to bring this in a stage where, because any response, Jach wants to sue me, great, we'll have it out in public. If Jach's, if anyone responds, which is the basis of responsibility, the ability and willingness to respond. If anyone responds at concept synergy and demonstrates competency and excellence and humanity and empathy, any of the teachings of Lazaris, well, the public can evaluate the quality of that response and its impact. That's my commitment, and my reason is these four.